searching for that feeling and duplicating that feeling, that love of story. And I think that's where that comes from. The stories that I write, those things that I came to learn and love about reading stories, I put that right into the stories that I write.
Excellent. Let us pause for a moment for a reading of just the titles of your work. Like Thunder, Shadow Speaker, Benji, Akata Witch. And these are at least 100 pages to 200 pages plus. Benji 1, Lagoon, Akata Woman, Akata Warrior, Who Fears Death, Noor, Remote Control. She contributed to Black Panther, After the Rain, Zara, Akata Woman, Shuri from Wakanda Forever. I think you've heard of her. Marvel Universe's Shuri, Kabu Kabu, Binti 1, 2, and 3, Chicken in the Kitchen, that's for children. Broken Places, she mentioned in part her story, she referenced her story in part when she responded to you. And I would like her, I will pause on that particular title for you to share more about how your journey to becoming a writer. That's fantastic.
All right, I'm gonna try to make this short, but it's a lot. So the way that I started writing was not normal. Like I said, I wanted to be an entomologist. I'm from the Chicago area. I grew up in the south suburbs, in South Holland particularly. And, okay, how do I go on with this? Okay. So, it's a hard story to tell. I've told it many times, but every time it's hard. Okay, so growing up, like I said, I love bugs. I was always interested in the sciences and math. And also I was an athlete. And I played semi-pro tennis from the age of 9 to 19. I also was a track star. And so basically lots of athletics. Both of my parents are, they were born and raised in Nigeria, but they were also athletes as well. My mom made the Olympic team in the javelin in Nigeria, and then my dad was a nationally known hurdler. So I come from athletics. All of my siblings are athletic as well. So from day one, I've always been, I was always that kid that kids would, whenever there was a game, I would be the first one chosen to be on the team because, if you had me on the team, you were going to win. So yeah, that was me. I love dodgeball. I always won dodgeball. Always. So very athletic, that was my identity. I loved running, the feeling of running, I could just describe that forever. And so when I started playing semi-pro tennis at the age of 9. When I was 13, I was diagnosed with scoliosis, which is normal, it's a curvature of the spine. Lots of people have scoliosis, but mine was very, very aggressive. Both of my siblings all have scoliosis, and theirs eventually stabilized, but mine was very aggressive. Part of it was that I was very tall, and I went from being average height to tall in a very short period of time, but also my tennis game so I had a killer forehand, where I was fast so I could run around my backhand and hit this inside-out forehand, so that was one of my secret weapons. But also, I could hit 114-mile-an-hour serve. So that was my weapon too. I would ace you the whole game, just win the whole game that way. So yeah, that's one side of my body. So I'm using one side of my body. So one side was getting very muscular and the other side was being neglected. So they think that might have been part of what caused the scoliosis to be so aggressive as well. So while this was happening, I was still doing all these sports. Like I said, love math and science. Not so good in literature, but I did read a lot. I've always loved reading. I've always loved stories. That was the only hint that I would be here talking about what I do today, because there was I did not see this coming. So yeah, I was doing my thing. I saw the United States through tennis. We were the Venus and Serena before Venus and Serena, because I had my two older, we were all 1 year apart, and we were just dominating in tennis. And so fast forward, In high school, took 1 year off of tennis, did track and field, won over 22 medals, was All-State Athlete of the Year in Illinois. So yeah, very athletic. So all of these things, so there's something coming though. So when I went to University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, yes, and I was on the tennis team, and in my freshman year, after my freshman year, the doctors took an x-ray of my spine and they said, this scoliosis is really aggressive, it is not getting better. I had worn a back brace, did exercise, did everything, it did not get better. They said my curvature was insane, and they said that I needed to have surgery on this immediately to straighten it out, and if I didn't, I would be crippled by the time I was 25, and my life would be significantly shortened. Now, mind you, I was doing all these athletic things, though. I just had a really curved spine, but I was able to walk on my hands, I was doing flips, I was running faster than everybody, doing all this stuff, and I had no pain. So hearing this was weird to me, but it was a pretty clear decision that I had to make. And they said that because they're dealing with the spine, there's always a chance of paralysis. So they said there's a 1% chance of paralysis, 1% versus 100% chance of the other stuff. It was a clear decision. So I made that decision, had the surgery that year in May, right after my freshman year in college. Went in completely fine, woke up 9 hours later, paralyzed from the waist down. They did not know if I would ever walk again. They did not know what happened. They did not know why. I was in that 1% chance of people who react to that surgery with paralysis. So you take a mega athlete and then have that happen to them suddenly. It's a recipe for insanity. It's like, it's a bad combination. I always just say bad because there is no word that could describe what it felt like being in that hospital bed. This was at the University of Chicago, and that was the hospital that I was at. So this happens, and I remember, imagine having your surgeon come into your room and his eyes are puffy because he felt that he was afraid that he just destroyed Illinois' top athlete. That happened. So it was sitting in that hospital bed where the moment happened. It was in the first few days after they took me off of the morphine because I was having all of these hallucinations from the morphine. Any drug in my system causes me to have hallucinations. And I started realizing my situation. Like literally half of my body had disappeared. It was like it was not there. It was so extreme that I couldn't even roll to the side. It was like being imprisoned in your body. It was bad. So within those first days, especially when my family would go home, when it was like during those hours where you couldn't have anyone visiting you, I had to be there in my body, with myself, with this situation that I was in. And it was dark. Like, it was just a dark time for me. And nothing bad had ever happened to me up to that point. I was happy. I was very mobile, all of that, and then this happens. And it was in that dark moment, especially in those first few days where I knew if I did not do something, that I was going to lose my mind in this way where I was not going to come back from it. I knew it. So I was 19 years old and I knew this. And I had a copy of the book I, Robot, which is a science fiction novel that a friend of mine had given to me. And I was in too much pain to read it, so I just picked it up. And there was a pen, and I just started writing these things, writing what was in my head on the edges of the book. And that was the moment. That was the moment where I started writing. I didn't know what it was that I was doing, but that moment, because once I started telling that story, the first story that I wrote was about a woman who could fly. And when you look back, when I look back, it's very clear why that would come to my mind, because when you can fly, you don't have to walk, So I wrote about this woman who could fly, and something about putting the pen to paper and writing, and then it focused my eye, first of all, visually focused my eye, and then also in focusing my eyes, it focused my mind, and then I kind of fell into the story that I was telling. And there was a sort of power in it too. There's a power in that, you know, creating and kind of weaving this story. And that was where I discovered storytelling. It was in those moments where I discovered storytelling. I'd never written a story creatively before that, never. But I loved reading, and I was a very imaginative kid, like things that came out of my mind were just, wow. But like, once I started telling those stories, it was, I discovered the thing, I discovered it. And to make a long story short, I haven't stopped writing since then. Everything changed from the moment that I started writing those stories. And I discovered that thing where I could pour everything. I could pour my pain, my joy, anything that was in my mind onto the page. That changed, it changed everything. And like, yeah, so just to kind of wrap it up, with it because I come from a very strong family, and not once did they ever let me believe that I would never walk again, even though since then I've met 2 people who have had the same thing happen to them, and they never walked again. But my family never let me believe that. And with intense physical therapy, even when I felt nothing, my family was like, "You're doing physical therapy." I'm like, what sense does it even make? But I did it anyway, because I listened to my family, did the physical therapy, and gradually the sensation started, I forced the sensation to return to my legs. And it was like I had to learn to walk again that entire summer. And I used a lot of the training I had from athletics for that. Like, my athletic mind definitely helped me walk again. So I went from a wheelchair to a walker, to a half walker, to a cane. And I returned to U of I with a cane. And then gradually I stopped using the cane. And the thing that I returned to U of I also with was telling stories. I returned basically a writer, even though I didn't call myself a writer until much later. So yeah, that's how I became a writer.
To see you now, we would never know. And will you take a moment? I'm giving you permission to brag on yourself. Blame me. Tell us now about some of your projects that you're able to, because I know that some of them there's some unfinished business. But yeah, please brag on yourself. What is upcoming after these 32 books? And may I mention, she has 3 degrees. She has 2 master's degree and a doctorate. So that's for starters. Yeah, you didn't mention that.
Okay, bragging. Okay, I'm not good at this. Okay, I'm gonna just, these are facts. It's not bragging, they're facts. They are things that exist. Okay, so after all that happened, I have gone on to write lots of books. You said 32, have I written 32? Good Lord, really? 32. Wow, okay, so I've written a lot of books. Okay, so, in one of the series, the Insibidi Script series, that's with the Akata Witch, Akata Warrior, and Akata Woman. That has gone on to become a New York Times bestseller. So that's great. I've won lots of awards. A lot of the. I hate bragging. It's hard to do. Yeah, they're facts. Okay.
World Fantasy, Nebula, Eisner, Lodestar, Nomo, Hugo Award.
Yeah, all those. Won awards. And then also my several of my books are in development for adaptation into TV series and movies. And that would include, let's see, at one point HBO, Amazon Studios. I can't say that one. And 20th Century Fox.
Wow.
And some other ones. We'll just leave it at that, because I know things that I can say. And yeah, there's some big ones in there, so like very active. And then I will say this one because I'm very proud of it. It sounds great, but I'm proud of it. I just sold a book for $1 million. It's a novel. We just changed the name. It was called The African Futurist, but it's to HarperCollins, and this one was heavy. This book is heavy, and I'm really looking forward to it. It was an amazing experience the way it sold. It was crazy, but yeah, that happened. So yeah, on the way. Which one?
Is that the name still?
It's not the name. It's not the name. I'm not ready to share the title yet. But yeah, we'll get to that. But yeah, that one I'm very excited about. So lots of stuff going on.
Okay, she's being humble. So I wanted to talk about kind of a recurring theme of the female superhero character. When I saw, for example, Wonder Woman, I didn't quite realize what I had been missing. You know, it's one of those things that until you read it or you see it on the screen, it's like, oh my gosh, this is really to see a female character as a superhero. And this is a regular staple of your work. Can you talk about the challenges you may have had in making that happen, and any other thing you'd like to share about why you decided to do that?
Yeah. So most of my novels they feature. I'm very character. I'm all about character. The stories that I write start with character. I'm the type of writer who hears her character speak to her. That's the first thing that happens is the character starts speaking to me. And most of my novels feature strong, central, complex, complicated, flawed, powerful female heroines from woman to girl. And not my current one. Like Thunder and Ikenga are my main characters are male characters. But and African as well. African, definitely. And part of that comes from, well, at one point when I was working on my master's. When I was working on my master's, I got my master's in journalism at Michigan State University. And at one point when, I love reading, like I said, I love reading and I love libraries. So I was the kind of student who would go into libraries, not only for finding something. I would go in there just to go in there. Just to look around, because libraries are full of secrets and answers. So, and university libraries are full of like all this dusty stuff, where just dusty and forgotten stuff. And I, as a writer, that stuff is like nourishing, that's food. So I would go into the library at Michigan State, and at one point, I was just in the stacks, and I found the whole wall of African literature, like a whole wall of it. And I was like, ooh, So I had my regular homework, but then I read everything on that wall. I just went through and read every single thing. It was just my own experience. And it wasn't for class, it was just, I was interested. And when I read all of the books, one thing I noticed, because I was reading it so fast, this was over a 2-year period, I was reading everything so quickly that I could look at least all of African literature in that moment in time. And I noticed, especially the female characters, I noticed that you had these stories that went into great detail about African women, great detail, and showed all of their plights and their struggles and all of that. But most of the books that I read, they didn't win. You'd get to the end and it was like especially Buchi Emechida. I read all of her stuff, and her stuff was dark, it's very detailed, but it was just the endings, you finish and you're like, why did I go through all of that, And so I just was seeing, I'm like, they weren't winning. And I wanted to write these stories where you had that kind of depth and that kind of realism, but I wanted them to win. And it wasn't just that they were, thank you, thank you. And if they didn't, like if it wasn't a happy ending, because my stories, they don't have to be happy endings, but like they did some damage. You know, they did some damage and made some dents in things, and so that became very important. So a lot of my characters come from that experience of reading all those stories and then wanting to create characters that in my opinion at the end they win, and you come away with this feeling of hope and power. That was really important to me. So that's really at the root of everything that I write. Even with my male characters, hope and power is a really big, a big theme and a big. It's something that I want the reader to take away when we finish.
I love that response. Yes. When you say hope and power, those two words adequately sum up how I feel after reading your work. You know, I called her like at midnight. Nnedi, why are you doing this to me? Because they're life-changing. She is not following the road. She's following the road less traveled. And I love to, at every opportunity, publicly thank her for fighting to make sure that the covers of her books have Black characters. I'm telling you, today's youth may say, oh, what's the big deal? But it was a struggle for you, and I'd love you to share a little about that. But every cover could be is a work of art that could hang on your wall. And she did that.
Yeah, that's a big thing, the covers, because, okay, so my first novel was published in 2005, this isn't the original cover though, and even with this one, Zara the Windseeker, it's a little stained, but you see how she's darker.
Yeah.
Even with this one, this is the paperback, which took some years, but even with this one, I'll say this. I had to fight my publisher to darken her, like 3 times. They showed me the image and I'm like, nah, she's too light, sorry. She needs to be darker. You need to make her darker. So I had to fight with that, and then even this thing